Yokoso owashitare, and we are back at it again with yet another look at the classical Japanese that occurs in Okami, one of the greatest PlayStation 2 games ever made. I don't know, that's quite the statement. I don't know, Devil May Cry, Kingdom Hearts. I mean, PlayStation 2 had some amazing games. Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, today we are looking at the classical Japanese that occurs when you get the brushstroke technique from the god Tachigami. I can't remember what the actual technique is called, the Great Slash or something like that, but it's one of the early ones that you get. And when you get it, of course, you are treated to some classical Japanese, at least if you're playing the Japanese version of the game. Now, for first-time viewers, if you don't know what classical Japanese is the ancient Japanese language. It's very, very old Japanese. It was largely spoken in the capital of Heian at the time, now it's modern Kyoto, about 1,000 years ago, and these people are basically the ones who laid the foundations of Japanese culture as we know it today. As such, as kind of the forerunners of Japan, their language was spread all over the country because at the time there were many different dialects and people communicated in sometimes not mutually intelligible ways. And so the whole country just kind of adopted this aristocratic way of speaking as a way to kind of unite the whole country, even though the whole country wasn't really united until way, way later, but that's for another story. That's another story for another time. But because of that, classical Japanese has this ancient, mystical, magical feel to it. Usually in anime or games, when you have gods or supremely powerful beings from the ancient past, they oftentimes are written and speak with classical or quasi-classical Japanese to give them that little bit of air of majesty and regality or aristocracy that comes with this language. And this video is probably going to be significantly shorter than the previous one for Yomigami, simply because it's just a shorter, there's less that's being said here, and because I've gotten warmed up a little bit and I know a little bit, there's some patterns, and I'm going to make some assumptions that you guys have seen the previous videos. But anyway, without further ado and without any more yapping from yours truly, let's just get into the actual video. Sorry, I said we'll get into it, but one more explanation. This brushstroke is given to you by the god Tachigami, and I believe you get it when you come to this statue of Nagi, I believe they call it. It's the guy who's the stand-in for Izanagi, and he's sitting there, his statue's there he's holding a sword pointing up to the sky, and you use Yomigami's technique to fill in the sword, and then the sword is now pointing to the sky, and then you look up in the sky and you see the constellation, you fill in the constellation, and then Tachigami shows up and he gives you this technique, which you then use to get out of the cave that you're in, because the statue is in a cave with like a hole in the ceiling for some reason, whatever. But you use it to get out of the cave because there's a bunch of stuff in your way, there's big boulders or something in your way that you gotta cut down. So, let's actually linguistically break down what Tachigami says. Anime, even though it's not really. Okay, first phraseology is the same thing that Yomigami says. O warera ga jibo. Okay, hold on. O warera ga jibo amaterasu omikami. Okay. Now, I'll go over this quick, but I'm going to go over it quick because it is in the previous video. It's in the first video, so if you want to know more, I'll break it down a little bit more there. You can go check that out. But oh is just like an ah, like oh, surprised to see you here. Wouldn't you know? Warera ga jibo. Warera comes from ware, which means I. Warera means us. It means multiple us. Ga is a particle that denotes either a subject in a sentence or in classical Japanese, oftentimes it can be possessive, which in this case it is possessive, because warera ga, our, jibo. Ji means like charity, altruism, goodness. I think mercy is kind of another way of that I didn't mention the last one. Mercy, compassionate, that kind of a thing. It's generally a good thing. It's a loving, caring kind of a feel. And then bo means mother. So jibo is actually a Chinese loanword. It's not a native Japanese word, but jibo means our caring, our gracious, our altruistic, our wonderful mother. Amaterasu o mikami. Amaterasu literally is a combination of two words. Ama, heaven. Terasu means shining. So the heaven shining. And then o mikami comes from okami. These two kanji right here. O means great and kami means God. So the great God. However, because it's kind of referencing the kojiki, where you have mi, which is like an honorific thing. It kind of means mighty or powerful, to denote some sort of spiritual grand power. So omikami means the great God, great honorific God. So, oh, our loving mother, the great goddess Amaterasu, the great goddess heaven shining honorific. Okay, now we actually get into original Tachigami stuff. By the way, we'll go over Tachigami's name later when he declares who he is. So, Mononoke, or she. I guess I don't know the sex of this of this make-believe mouse. Anyways, Mononoke habikoru jinkai de waga mi o kakuseru no wa. Okay? So, Mononoke is a combination of two words. Mono means a thing, and then no is I guess possessive is the right word to use it here, but it's of. Again, if you've seen previous videos, you'll know this, but if you're new to Japanese, and if you know Japanese already, you'll understand how this works. But no just means of. However, when we say in Japanese, like the book of 5 rings, okay? The book of 5 rings. In Japanese, what they say is, they say the 5 rings of book. Gorin, 5 rings, no of sho, book, okay? So whatever you do in Japanese is you turn the no to of, and then you take whatever is on either side of the of and you swap it. So, mono no ke. Mono means a thing, and then ke means in this instance, you can say like a spirit, a intangible thing of and not an intangible thing like a thought, but an intangible thing like a spirit. You can't really touch it. You can't really like mess with it, but it's there. It's in the actual world. You can see it. Well, I mean, I guess you can't always see mononoke, but anyway. This kanji here you'll see in the words for like yokai, right? This K is the kai in yokai, which just, again, means spirit, and usually not a nice one. Usually a mononoke, because mononoke, like in Princess Mononoke, means like the princess of the bad spirits. Mononoke are usually not something that you want around you. They're usually pretty bad, malign spirits, essentially what they are. So mononoke, so like evil spirits. Mononoke habikoru, okay? Habikoru, I guess that's the original verb. That's how you would say it in its original. That's both the ending form, which can be like the plain form, the usual form, the infinitive, I guess we could say, even though I don't really think Japanese has infinitives in the same way that we do. But habikoru means to be all over the place, to spread everywhere, okay? I don't actually know what habi is, but this kanji here, or actually, see, I don't even know how this works. So I don't know what this first kanji is. This second kanji, I believe, is like noboru, which means, or noboru. It means to like expand, or to like stretch, or to go bigger. So habikoru is an ancient Japanese way of saying to spread all over, okay? However, this verb is in the attributive form. It's technically not in the infinitive in the ending form. It's in the attributive form, which means that it is actively being used to describe a following noun. Okay, and the attributive form can be used either with verbs or adjectives, because they are all used to describe nouns. Now, when you do it with verbs, again, there are different ways of ending a verb. There's different ways of conjugating a verb in classical, well, in modern Japanese too, but in classical Japanese, specifically with the attributive form, which technically the Japanese term for it is rentaike. But so this is describing a following noun, which is jinkai. Now, I do know what these two kanji mean. This first kanji means dust, or it can also mean trash, useless stuff we don't like, right? So dust or dirt, dirty, and then kai means boundary, but in this sense, it's better to think of it as a world. So a jinkai is like a world of dust, which basically is just talking about this fallen world. It's an unclean world. It's a world full of sin and death and impurity and all that kind of good, wonderful, wonderful stuff. So mononoke habikoru jinkai, okay, means the dusty or the fallen world wherein has spread all over mononoke evil spirits. And then we have this particle de, which again is a little bit interesting because if we're being purely classically Japanese, okay, purely classically Japanese without any shortcuts, this should technically be ni, te, a combination of the particles ni and te. Ni means like place. It's the preposition particle. Basically, it's like at, in, on, by, those kinds of things. And then you would have the te, which basically is like a connecting. It means that we're stating this, but we're connecting this thing to a thing that's following. However, over time, the ni te eventually just became n te, And then when you do that, you automatically start voicing the te, which makes it de. So ni te, de. That's how you get that. And basically what this means is at this, or at this place, and. So in the world wherein Mononoke, wherein the evil spirits have spread abroad, waga mi o kakuseru no wa. So waga comes from, again, we saw with warera, comes from ware, which means I, myself. Now, what you do when you make ware possessive is, technically you're not supposed to say ware no, which is much to my chagrin when I'm playing Genshin and Shao comes on and he keeps saying ware no, and there's a bunch of anime stuff that does this, and it frustrates me to no end because they didn't do that, okay? Or maybe I'm sure some did, but it wasn't very common. The proper way of turning ware into a possessive is to drop the de and add the ga on the end of it, okay? So waga means mine, and waga, me here means myself, my body. Me literally more accurately means body, but more abstractly can mean my person. So waga mi is a little bit more, I guess, humbling sense of saying I, instead of just saying ware, which has a little bit more of a definitive like I. Waga mi is like I myself, you know, and it because it's a little bit longer and it's a little more indirect, it's a little bit softer is the way that I can describe it. Now, this is just me talking out of my butt here because I'm no expert in this. I just have been reading a lot of classical Japanese and trying to understand it my best, and I do not fully understand it like you read Tale of Genji. Sometimes I have no idea what they're talking about. Sometimes I know very much what they're talking about, but sometimes I have no idea what they're talking about. But just the sense that I get is wagami is a little bit more soft. It's a little bit softer than just saying ware. However, we have wagami o, okay? O is a particle that denotes the object of a sentence. Basically, what that means is in a sentence, you have the thing that does an action. You have the action. This is how we do it in English. There's a thing that does the action, the action that is happening, and the thing that the action is happening to. So I am the subject. I'm the doer. Eat is the action. Pizza is the thing that is receiving the action, which is me eating the pizza. So wagami o. This o in Japanese, they don't really, I mean, they do care about word order, but they have other things. They have these particles that basically serves different functions in the sentence compared to what we often use, where we denote the object roughly by, I guess, context and where it is in the sentence. We are very peculiar about word order. The Japanese are, but they don't have to be because they have these fancy little particles that tell you what the part of the sentence is doing. So o just means wagami o. So it means that Tachigami here, this little mouse guy, girl, whatever, is going to be doing something to his or herself, okay? And that thing is kakuseru no wa, okay? Now this comes from the verb kakusu, is the root verb, which means to hide. However, we conjugate it in the kakuseru, and this basically turns it into I guess you can say a continuation form. It means Tachigami here is saying that he hid in this, well, he's going to say is he hid in the statue. But it's not that like he hid in the statue and then left. It's like he hid there and was there continuously for a very, very long time. And now here's another thing that is more indicative of a modern Japanese thing. It's not quite classical Japanese. In classical Japanese, they probably would just put the wa here and they just get rid of this no. They probably just wouldn't have the no. The no here in modern Japanese is a nominalizer, is essentially what it is. Basically, it takes a verb and it turns it into a noun. Now, the interesting thing here, though, is because this is basically turning this previous verb into a noun, what we have to do with this verb kakuseru is in the ending form of kakusu or kakuseri is, well, kakuseri. However, we turned it into the kakuseru because that is the attributive form. So basically, we are describing this no here, which turns it into a noun. So essentially, we have two ways of turning this into a noun. And then we have the particle wa, which is, I guess technically is the topic marker. It can function as a subject marker, but topic marker, from what I understand, is a little bit better thing to say, a little more accurate. And basically, it's just saying that we are going to be talking about this. So whatever comes next, this is the focus of our discussion. And what is the focus of our discussion? This whole thing here. In the fallen world, replete, wherein Mononoke, wherein bad, evil spirits have spread all over the place, in regards, that's what the wa can be, in regards to me hiding myself, Okay. So in regards to me hiding myself in this world overrun with demons, okay? Inishiē no. Inishiē means ancient times. Nowadays we'd say kodai. However, in classical, what they would say is inishiē, and that comes up in poetry and stuff. So inishiē no. So there's that no again. This time it's functioning like of. Then we have eiyu. This is a Chinese loan word that means hero. Okay, I believe the a is like superb, like astounding, wonderful, wondrous, like praiseworthy, and then the u here is like a manly, a masculine, or like a fighter, strong, sturdy kind of a thing. So eiyu means a hero, a wondrous, strong person. Okay. So Inishiē no eiyu means ancient of heroes. Okay. However, again, what we do in English is we have to flip that around. So we say the hero of ancients, the hero of ancient times. Okay. And meaning the hero of ancient times, o is the thing that's going to be receiving the verb that follows. Matsuru. Okay. This comes from the root verb, matsuru, which means to, I guess, worship at. It means to offer up, is what you can say, is what you can think of. In modern Japanese, some of you may know the word matsuri, which is basically the noun form of this verb, matsuru, which means to offer up. And a matsuri in modern Japanese is a festival, because the idea behind most festivals is that you are giving offerings, you're making offerings to the gods. That's why you usually have a mikoshi, a little palanquin that you take a shrine's god and you supposedly put the god on the palanquin, and then you move the god around and you carry them wherever and you offer them up. Dances and foods and whatever. But the root word matsuru is a verb which means to offer up, okay? Or I guess in this sense, offering up is very closely related to worship. So you're worshiping a thing. So Inishiē no eiyu matsuru means worshipping the heroes of ancient, or an ancient hero. Worshipping the hero of ancient times. Now, this is technically its ending form, okay? I mean, this could be its ending form because the ending form and the attributive form of matsuru are the same. However, this is, yet again, an attributive form. And if you're wondering why it's always attributive, why don't we ever do the regular verb form where we end the sentence? Because in classical Japanese especially, they have a billion different ways of keeping an entire sentence going, and they do not stop a sentence until they feel like they've gotten the entire multi-layered idea said. So with matsuru, so offering up to, which is this is offering up to the hero of ancients, the ancient hero, kono sasayaka naru hokora nomi. So, kono means this. That's just simple. It means this. Kono sasayaka naru. So, sasayaka naru comes from the root verb sasayaka nari, okay? Which again, if you notice, this is just skipping ahead a little bit. Sasayaka nari, it would be the ending form. However, we are doing yet another attributive form, sasayaka naru, attributive form, which is going to be describing this following noun. But sasayaka naru means like minute or detailed. Very specific, very peculiar, but like very, very small. Which basically, I think this is Tachigami basically saying that this statue was wondrously made and it was very detailed. It was very excellent, supreme, well-made statue. Kono sasayaka naru hokora. And hokora, in this case, it's a statue, but a hokora is a shrine. It's a kind of a shrine. So basically, he is talking about, again, if we remember the previous screen, he says that in regards to me hiding myself in this world full of demons, it was, I guess you could say is the best way to translate this ending part here, it was this shrine dedicated to the ancient hero. This wondrously crafted shrine dedicated to the ancient hero, which is Nagi if you've played the game. Izanagi is where he's pulled from. And then after hokora, it has this particle nomi. Now, nomi, even though it's got two sounds, is one particle. Nomi means only or just. So only this shrine that was dedicated to the ancient hero that was made superbly, that is the only place where he hid himself. Because he's talking about, again, the previous section was, in regards to me hiding myself, only this statue that is offering up, that is dedicated to the ancient hero. So he's just saying that this is where I hid myself, and only here. I didn't go to any other places. I found this statue and boom, that's where I planted myself. And then we have to end this little phraseology properly to say that we're done with this idea, which is nari keri. Now, nari is the verb that means to be. It's a classical ancient Japanese verb, to be. And technically, both its ending form is nari and its connective form, it's renyoke is what they call it in Japanese. Basically, the connective form is the form that is the conjugation that allows you to stick other things onto the end of it. If you want to just keep the sentence going, or you just have like, it's part of one facet of a larger, more complex sentence, you can just do nari and then continue on. In this case, what it's doing is it's allowing us to add this final jodoshi, this final auxiliary verb, keri, which is a past tense, but not really a past tense. It's more of a recollective thing, okay? And keri is in the ending form. The attributive form of it is keru. However, we're having it in keri, which means we're finally done with this thought. This multi-layered 3-panel thought. I think it's 3 panels, at least 2-panel thought. So he said, I hid myself in this statue, only in this statue, in this world overflowing with demons. Moving on. Okay, next word. So we're starting a whole new sentence, whole new thought. Bansho. Bansho is a Chinese loanword. Ban literally means, ban or man means 10,000, but more abstractly, it can mean innumerable, a host of, exceedingly many, okay? And then sho means appearance. Sho or so means appearance. And bansho just means like innumerable appearances. This is basically, I think a better way of translating it is saying something like the myriad phenomenon of the world. Okay, the myriad phenomenon, which basically just means all of creation. Okay, everything that happens, everything that you see, everything that you can see, everything that you can experience is the bansho. And then we have this no again, which means of, and then we have kami, which again means God. So the creation of God. However, again, because it's Japanese, flip it around, the God of all creation, the God of all phenomena. Which is quite the thing to say about Amaterasu Omikami, because in the original Kojiki, she's not the great creator goddess. She is the goddess of the sun, and granted, she is the head of the Japanese pantheon. She's the most powerful, or rather I don't know if senior among them is the right word, but the most preeminent of the gods, the goddess of the Yamato clan. But she didn't create the world. That was actually her parents, or rather her dad and her deceased mother, even though Izanagi kind of gave birth to her himself. As this whole complicated thing. But I guess what they're trying to say is they're just trying to add some really highfalutin fancy wording here to give one of the great goddesses of the Japanese pantheon her due diligence, her due respect, and all of that good stuff. Bansho no kami. Then we have this auxiliary verb, jodoshi, taru. Now, taru comes from the root verb tari, which is very similar to nari. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between them. My understanding is that generally, tari/taru, in this case, because taru is the attributive form, because it's being used to describe something that comes after. But tari, from what I understand, is used a little more often with Chinese loanwords. Now, I'm also given to understand that nari comes from the combination of the particle ni and the verb ari, which means ari means to exist. And tari, or taru, comes from the combination of the particle to and ari. And my understanding is that ni is a little more, ni just means like at. You know, it's the prepositional thing. It's like at, in, on, around, by. But to, the best way I can describe to a lot of the time when it's not using in a quotation is as. So maybe what I might be getting at, and again, I'm just kind of yapping at this point, kamitaru means as the God of all creation. Okay? As the God of all creation. And again, we're in this attributive form because we're describing this Omoto, which comes next. O is an honorific word. It's just a very honorific thing that you put in front of words to give them a little more, honorifics. And then moto here, this kanji actually is originally used with forgive or allow, I think is a better way to put it. And allow, in this instance, is used to denote the word moto, which means like base or place, okay? So omoto means honorific allowing, or the honorific place. Now, again, this is getting a little bit complicated here, but bear with me. The connection between all of these things is when you had somebody of high status, right? They would be at their place of residence. They would be at their palace, their castle, their whatever, their really fancy place, right? And if people of lower status had something that they wanted from the person of superior status, those people were supposed to come to that person's moto, to their base, to their foundation. That's what moto can mean. To their base, their foundation, where they are planted, okay? And they are then allowed to approach that person and give up their petition, okay? To give their petition, to ask. So Omoto here has this multifaceted meaning of like place / allowance / with the O in there, that's honorific. And basically, that is all to explain this really fancy way of saying you. This is basically, this game treats Omoto as a second person pronoun. Now, if I saw this in classical Japanese, like an actual classical Japanese work, I wouldn't immediately assume that it is a second person pronoun, because they did have second person pronouns in classical Japanese, but second person pronouns are almost considered a little too rude. They're a little too direct. You even see this in modern Japanese today, where if you're very direct with what you're saying, that's usually impolite, I guess you could say. And so they developed fancy ways of describing, of talking about people without actually using a second person pronoun and without using their names. So, for example, in the Tale of Genji, okay, this in English is like 1,100 page work, okay, like huge work. This is not a small book, but you can probably count on two hands the number of times an actual name is used, like an actual person's name. The lead character, Hikaru Genji, his name is not Hikaru Genji. Hikaru just means shining, and Genji just means the Minamoto clan, because he was made a member of the Minamoto clan, and he was so beautiful and so spectacular that he supposedly, it was almost like he was shining, so they called him Hikaru Genji, but his name was not Hikaru, and his last name was not Genji. If anything, it would have been Minamoto no something or other. But we don't know what his something or other is. We go 1,100 pages. Well, I guess, the last little bit isn't actually about Genji. It's about his descendants or whatever. But we never hear his actual name. His main love interest, Murasaki no Kimi. Okay? Her name is not Murasaki. Her name is something else entirely that we don't know. The only name I can remember off the top of my head that's actually a name is Koremitsu, which is one of Genji's retainers, one of his servants, one of his guys who has his back. And they name him a couple of times, and I'm pretty sure there are some other instances where people are actually name dropped, but they don't use names hardly at all in that work. Again, it's 1,100 pages. So that is all to say that instead of using second person pronouns, they would use something like omoto, or they would use something like otodo, which means counselor, or high up government person, or they would say something like no miya, which means of the palace of blah blah blah. So Ichinomiya, the one of palace, or the palace of one, the first palace, which basically means that is the first child of this palace, of this residence that we're talking about. And that's how they would refer to people. Or they would refer to people by their job titles. Okay, sorry, that was a that was a little bit of a we got sidetracked there. I apologize, but it's very important to understand some of these cultural contexts in order to fully appreciate what's going on here. Anyway, so we've got Bansho no Kami taru Omoto, okay? So you, as the god of all creation, as the god of all things. O, again, there's that O, it means that you, as the god of all creation, is going to be the thing that's receiving the action. That action being tasukuru koto, okay? Tasukuru. Now, tasukuru in modern Japanese is taskeru, comes from the root verb tasuku, okay? Which means to help, to save, to aid. Now, we go from tasuku, we put tasukuru because we're making it attributive form again. And then we're using tasukuru to describe the verb, or describe the noun koto. Koto means thing, but it means intangible thing. So for example, the act of tasukuru, okay? Tasukuru koto is the act of helping, the thing of helping. The thing of helping is not a physical thing. I can't reach out and poke the thing of helping, okay? The act of helping. The act of helping can be all sorts of things, but I can't touch it. It's like an idea. It's a thought. It's an intangible thing, but not intangible in the sense like a mononoke. A mononoke is intangible, but it's in the physical world. It's not an idea. It's like a thing that floats around and causes problems. But a koto is just like an idea. It's an intangible thing. And then tasukuru koto, koso, is followed by the particle koso, which is a very emphatic particle. It means this thing. We're talking about this thing. I want to bring all the focus on this thing, okay? Emphatic. there's really nothing else to say about it. So, the thing of helping you as the god of all gods of all phenomenon. Wa ga, there again, my, tsutome nareba, okay? Tsutome comes from the root verb tsutomu, okay? Which means to undergo a task, to do something but out of a sense of duty, It's like your job, it's your work. Now we go from tsutomu, which is just the regular ending form of the verb. We turn it into tsutome, which turns it into a noun. So the act of doing your business, the act of doing your duty, the act of engaging in a task. So waga tsutome means my task, my mission, my calling. Nareba comes from the root verb nari, which again we talked about is to be. So is my task. However, we turn it into nare, so we can add this ba on the end of it. And when you have something end in eba, nareba, in if we were to do it with tasuku, it would be taskureba, or wakareba, or hanaseba, okay? It means when or because. When or because. So, because my job, because my duty is to help you, oh great, as the great God of all things, okay? Because it is my duty. Taima no kenbu, okay? Taima is a Chinese loanword. Tai means to back away, to exit, to get away from. And ma means demon or magic, evil kind of magic. So taima literally means something like the expulsion of evil spirits, the expulsion of evil magic, evil forces. Then again, we have no, which means of, and then kenbu is again another Chinese loanword. Ken means sword. And then bu means dance. So the getting rid of evil spirits of sword, which again, flip it around, the sword or the sword dance of dispelling evil spirits. So the sword dance of dispelling evil spirits, o, meaning that it's receiving the action, and then motte. Now this motte, this is a really complicated idea to get across. Well, it's not really complicated, but to explain what it is in the original kanji, I'm not going to explain what the original kanji means because that's really hard. But omote means by means of, or with, or through doing this thing. So through the sword dance of dispelling evil spirits, aku. Aku is a Chinese loanword, means evil. O, again, meaning that aku is receiving evil, is receiving the action of harau. Harau means to dispel or to get rid of, to sweep away. And then taiyaku. And harau is in the attributive form, again. Harau, taiyaku. So the taiyaku that is being described by harau, the dispelling of evil, taiyaku. Tai means great, and yaku means purpose, I guess you could say. Purpose, duty, again, is kind of closely related to the tsutome that we just saw. So the taiyaku, my great purpose, my great work, my great use, I guess you could say. So aku o harau taiyaku. So we're talking about through teaching you the sword dance that dispels spirits, through doing that, aku o harau taiyaku, the purpose, the great purpose of ridding evil, of dispelling evil. Kono means this. Tachigami, okay? So Tachigami is this brushstroke god's name. Comes from the root verb. Everything is a verb in Japanese. Here's the thing. It all starts from verbs and eventually gets adapted into other things. So tachi comes from tatsu, which means to sever, to cut. However, we put it in the tachi, which again is the connective form, like we had with nari. So nari keri. We didn't have just nari, we had nari keri because we added a thing onto it. Now what we're doing here is we go from tatsu to tachi, so we can add this gami onto it, the kami, okay? So the god of severing, the severance god, the slash god, the cutting god. This is sounding a little sketchy the more I talk about it. So, kono tachigami ni, so to this god, to I. Now this is another thing in classical Japanese. In modern Japanese it happens too, but it happens a lot more in classical Japanese. Again, because it was considered a little bit rude to just be direct, they would refer to themselves a lot in the third person when talking about themselves. So instead of saying ware, whatever, he says kono tachigami. So this tachigami. Not just like me, but just like he's being a little more roundabout with it because, again, he's speaking to what in his mind is his lord, his queen, his goddess, right? So he's being as a god himself, he's being very bold and strong and dignified, but he himself is also being extraordinarily humble and placing himself down lower, so he's being very beat around the bush when talking to Amaterasu. So, to this god Tachigami, azuke rare yo. Okay, hold on. So this ni here, again, ni normally is the preposition particle. To, at, in, on. In this case, by, I think is the best way to go with. By. Because what follows is the verb azuke rare yo, okay? Comes from the root verb azuku. Okay? Azuku, modern Japanese azukeru. Now, what we're doing here, because this is a little bit complicated, is we go from azuku to azuke, and then we add the passive daru on the end of it, or dadi, I guess. Azuke dari. Azuke daru, I think is what maybe. Azuke daru. Okay? Now, what that does is it goes from azuku to entrust, azuku, azukeru, to entrust. We go from to entrust to be entrusted. Okay? And when you do the passive voice, you have to mark what is doing the action as opposed to what is receiving the action with ni. Okay? It means to or at, by. And then what he's doing is we go from azuke daru to azuke rare yo, which turns it into a command form. So this last little bit here, he is saying, through the sword dance that dispels demons, dispel evil, the great purpose I have of dispelling evil, by me be entrusted with. Okay, so be entrusted by me with this sword dance that dispels evil for the purpose of dispelling evil. I mean, it sounds a little bit redundant when it's said this way, but the way it's worded here, it's actually really poetic and cool. Okay, and I think that's... Yes, so that's the end of it. So let's go back and just refresh, okay? So, our great merciful God, our great merciful mother, Amaterasu o Mikami. Great God, heaven shining. So, in regards to me hiding myself in the world overrun with demons or evil spirits, it was only in this statue, in this shrine dedicated to the ancient hero, that was built very, very precisely and very, very acutely. Very, very detailed. Very excellent craftsmanship. Because it is my duty to help you, as the God of all things, as the God of all phenomena, be entrusted by me for the purpose of dispelling evil through this sword dance that destroys, that gets rid of evil spirit. Okay, now hopefully this video is a little bit shorter than the previous one. I think I did a bit better of a job this time going through this, but yeah, hopefully if you learned anything, hopefully it was useful to you, hopefully you learned some things. Hopefully it's also useful for you folks who are trying to learn regular Japanese, because a lot of these same rules apply to modern Japanese, even though most modern Japanese speakers can't actually understand classical Japanese. If they just tried a little bit, if they just really tried a little bit, if they studied as much as I did, man, they would have no problems with this. They'd be able to read Tale of Genji and be like, oh, well, obviously this is what it means. As somebody who doesn't have some of those natural inclinations and those natural assumptions about Japanese, the language, I struggle with it more than they certainly would, but most of them don't study it because I study it because I'm a nerd and I'm weird, and apparently there's no hope for me. But anyway, hopefully you learned something about classical Japanese. If not classical Japanese, maybe something about modern Japanese, and if not about modern Japanese, maybe something about classical Japanese culture and why some of these things happen and the way that they think and the way that things were. But anyway, with all that being said, I am going to end it here. So please let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel because, again, there are at least 13 of these. This is the second of 13, so there are going to be at least 11 more? 11 more? 10 more? 11 more. I'm a history major, not a math major. Give me a break. And then even after that, we've got other games and potentially even anime that I want to look into as far as classical Japanese analyses. So please subscribe to the channel. Please share with your weeb friends. Share with your friends who are learning Japanese. Share with your friends who are learning classical Japanese, although I can't imagine there are that many of them. And hopefully we will see you next time for when we go over the next brushstroke god, the next celestial brush technique god, which I think is one of the monkeys, one of the three monkeys. Although I guess the three monkeys are all one god, but there's three separate gods. Okay, but now we're starting to get into never mind. I'm not gonna have a big diatribe about Christianity right now. Anyway, thank you so much. We'll see you later. Goodbye, everybody.